In today's discussion of industry status, we're going to talk about how that relates to industry conditions, and we'll also spend a fair amount of time looking at industry life cycle. When you look at the role of industry status, we want to reconcile that with conditions, and that it's the industry conditions that frame the knowledge and the demand factors within the markets that you may pursue. Industry status is different in that it looks at two central elements. It looks at the life cycle within that industry, and it looks at the structure within that industry. A couple of elements that we want to focus on there is that we want to emphasize your attention to growth opportunities. We'd like to pursue in industries that are growing and that are on the beginning of that curve. We also want you to recognize how industries evolve and at what point you're entering that industry and what's going to happen as new competitors emerge and as some standards and norms begin to take hold in that industry. What we also hope to help you do when you think about industry status is recognize what's the timelines and what are the windows of opportunity that are going to maximize your success when you begin to enter that industry. So by life cycle, what we're looking at there is kind of the life of the company. So what's the life cycle of a person? What's the life cycle? What are the stages of a person, of a human?
You have childhood, young adulthood.
Okay, what comes even before childhood?
Fetus.
There's some element of before infant, of what?
Fetus.
Kind of fetus and conception. So in that way, again, if you go all back the way back to conception, and then there's baby, and there's child, and there's young adult, and middle age, and late age, and old, and real old, and death. So again, businesses often run a similar cycle. It's conceived, it grows, it matures, and most businesses in time will die. Every year, Fortune magazine does a ranking of the top 500 companies based on revenues in the U.S., and they've been doing it a long time, probably 80 years or so, I would expect. So how many companies from the 1930 Fortune 500, the 500 biggest companies in the U.S., are still on the list today?
Two. Couple.
Two.
One. None. Probably. I would say a majority of them, except for all the tech.
A majority of them. Okay. What do you think? What are big companies today that you think are 80 years old or more?
IBM.
Like Ford and Cadillac, be like really old.
Okay. Ford, Cadillac, again, 1930s, they weren't that big then. The majority of people didn't have a car. It's almost like people that have planes now. Most people don't have planes. So small, emerging. Ford is over 100 years old, so you're right in your timeline, but they were pretty small back then.
I can't remember which companies they broke into, but like the Bell Telephone Company, whichever the companies they broke into.
Okay, so there's an element was the telephone companies, but again, they've been broke and split, and some have fallen, some have risen.
Mobile.
Exxon potentially be there, although they rode the rise more of the automobiles. So until the automobiles got really popular. Yep.
Like older banking companies?
Like?
Wells Fargo.
Wells Fargo.
Morgan.
JP Morgan. It's a little more basic than that. What are some basic brands and goods you use?
GE.
GE is one. So General Electric is one.
Walmart.
Oh, no. No, way, way, way. Not Mercedes. They're also a German company.
Procter & Gamble.
Not quite Procter. There's another. I don't see any of y'all with it.
Do it in vacuum.
No, not the tech firms. Coca-Cola. So to my knowledge, it's GE and Coca-Cola. What happened to the rest? What happened to the other 400 and something?
Well, their uses were taken over and developed into something better by other companies.
There were businesses that died. Wagon wheel companies died. Gold mining companies died, at least in the U.S. And there were lots of other companies that emerged. So in that way, again, we want to recognize as we're thinking about industries and markets that we're not entering things at the late stage, that we were trying to get in at the earlier phases. And in that way, we want to think about opportunities where we're getting into things in the beginning, that we are going to be an early entrant, and we'll talk about the advantages of that. And we find that it's much easier to attract customers when there aren't market leaders already in the space. And what we mean by that is if you're of the mindset to go out and buy a new smartphone, you're probably going to look to Apple or Samsung, maybe a Nokia, maybe a Motorola, but your options are relatively slim. Probably not a market that you'd want to enter at this phase. There are a few people in the market. There are a few people that do it really well. They have the brand, the relationship, their technical standards that have emerged. But we'll talk about some other industries that are very much in their infancy, where there's not a major player already there. There's not somebody that already owns the market. And so that's the dynamic that we're talking about with lifecycle. This is a chart that was done 2009, I believe it was, by the Gartner Group. And what they did is they tried to map a number of different technologies and where they were in their industry life cycle. So if you look to your right and you see this element of estimated years to mainstream adoption, they have this little color coding element. So they've highlighted some things that they think are a long way off. So in that way, mobile robots, they think are very early. Anybody have a robot in their home? Know what a Zumba is?
Like those things.
The little mobile vacuums. Anybody have one of those? Okay, 3 or 4 of you. You didn't, but you didn't know you had a robot in your home? So in that way, again, we're beginning to see such things, but they are kind of single purpose. They are a bit rare. They work? Sometimes. But I watch the advertising. The commercials say they work really well. They're commercials, yeah. So what's the problem with these small, portable, autonomous vacuum cleaners?
Well, they're vacuum cleaners, so like as the more use that you get out of them, they will break and wear down.
Okay, so the durability.
And then their battery life starts to die really soon.
Okay, you have battery issues in charging, and it gets halfway through your room and dies. What else happens with these things? Do they get back to the base and find their way back or not? They get stuck on things. Unless you set the settings just right, it may go down your flight of stairs. Again, there are some problems. So again, when you look at these, it's not to say that none of these exist or it's going to be 10 years before you see anything. The key word here is mainstream, meaning that when everybody has one. And we look in some other areas that are a little more near term, and we see this element of wireless power. So again, the robots are arguably 10 years out. The wireless power is arguably 5 years out. What do I mean by wireless power?
Is it like those charging stations where like you can just place your phone on?
Okay. It's similar to the element of I have a pad, and instead of having to plug all of my devices in, I can lay my stuff on this pad, and there's some level of charging without a wire. It's called inductive charging. But in this model, it's a little more like I never have to plug, charge, lay, put this anywhere. If I can receive data wirelessly, then I should be able to receive power wirelessly. And it's just going to, just as we push data to a device, it's going to push power to a device. Does it seem reasonable? In principle, it sounds very doable. Certainly easier said than done. And there are other things that are projected to be much closer. E-book readers. ebook readers. And it's important to recognize how you define that, because different people have different terms. Anybody have a Kindle? Okay. 5 people have Kindles, so about 12% of you. Did you buy your Kindle? Or was it a gift?
I bought it.
Gift. Say it one more time. You bought it for her, but now you use it? You don't? Okay. So, you bought it and you use it. So, 1. So, the other folks were gifts?
Yeah.
Okay. So, 1. So, we're down to about 3% that bought and used. When did you buy it?
Whenever, like in 8th grade, so like 4 years ago.
So, you bought it 4 years ago, pre-iPad,
Yeah.
which is when most people bought their ebook readers. So, keep that in mind for a moment. What we see is that ebook sales are projected to pass print book sales by 2017. And so this is out of PricewaterhouseCoopers. They do different market research in this area. So they have data illustrating where we are now in this sense. So there's a pretty big gap between the two, between 5 to 12 billion in U.S. sales. So it's already pretty big. It's already, at this model, again, billion in U.S. sales. So here we are with ebooks now. So pretty big number. But what we see going forward is that along about here, you've got an intersection projected early 2017 when the popularity is going to invert. Why? Anybody bought an ebook recently? Okay.
Well, I bought a iPad for my school. And
Okay.
So next year, I'm only supposed to have one book, one paper book, and the
Okay.
rest is on the iPad.
So the rest of your textbooks are going to be ebooks. Okay? And those are provided by your school, or you purchase those? Okay. So you are going to be receiving textbooks provided by your school in ebook form. So they buy them, you use them, instead of them buying printed books that you use. Okay? Anybody else bought an ebook? Ever? Couple. Okay. Why didn't you buy the print version? I'll hit each of you.
So I bought it on my phone on iBooks because it's just easier instead of carrying a book all around. So like
Okay.
I have downtime, I can just pull it out.
So it's portability. It's kind of always with you. Why else did you buy the ebook instead of the print?
It's cheaper.
Typically, it's less expensive to buy the ebook version. We think it should be free. Why do we think it should be free? Why do many consumers think that anything digital online should be free?
Because like you're paying for the device, so whatever comes with
Okay, because there's a sense of, well, if I bought the hardware, I should be able to get all the software I can eat.
You're not receiving anything physical when you buy it.
There's nothing physical, so there's a thought, well, the cost to the manufacturer to incrementally produce this is zero, so why do they want to charge me? Why do they charge you? What are the other costs involved with that?
Writing the book.
There's the effort of production, of making the product. And it is less expensive to distribute ebooks than to distribute print, and that's why they can charge you less. But it doesn't mean there's no effort involved in the creation of what it is that you're consuming. But nonetheless, so we see much more portable, cheaper, typically, other benefits of ebooks.
It's not only ecological, but
Okay, so it's more environmentally friendly.
like you can also use tools inside the ebook, like you can highlight a word if you don't know it and it defines it.
You should be able to do things with the ebook that you can't do with a print book. So in that way, you should be able to tap on something and see a definition if you don't know what it is. Perhaps you can tap on something and see a picture, see an image, see other things. Hold on one second. Is there a question back there? Okay, if you have questions, ask me. I bet I know the answer. So in that way, when you think about what can I do with an ebook, you should be able to do things better than with a printed book. What's it mean when you have a product that has more features than the preceding product? What should that mean about the price point? Should be higher. I have a product that is better. It's portable. It's more durable. It's environmentally friendly. It's got features and functions and images and video and click, and I can save and highlight and share. You can do all these things with an ebook. Can't do with a print book. But why would people probably balk at being charged more for an ebook? Why would people be against that, do you think?
I don't know. There's like a sense that you don't have the book. I mean,
There's still that tangible. There's that physical. There's that tactile of I still want what I'm used to. Anybody have tried reading an ebook and not like it? Okay. Why not like it?
I still felt kind of weird just having like this little device in your
Kind of feels odd. You know, I'm reading my novel like this. Kind of feels odd. Yep.
I like have technology. I want to do other things.
You might want to do something that doesn't use the technology that you're always in. You're tired of being like this. Yep.
Yeah, going on for that, it's sort of like looking into something that's not, doesn't feel like a book at all. It sort of feels like you're looking at...
Doesn't feel like I'm used to. We'll do two more. Yep.
I know my parents don't like it because they're like, you're just like playing more electronics. Even
Okay. So it's kind of that getting away from technology. We'll do one more. Yep.
I see that. I feel like really easily distracted. Like I could just switch off of it.
There's the element of feeling a bit distracted, particularly if you are reading it in the context of, you know, on a bigger device, on a tablet. Well, I wonder how my sports team is doing. I wonder what so-and-so celebrity is up to. I wonder what so-and-so is doing tonight. There's a temptation of kind of bouncing out of it and doing something else that we might not necessarily want to do. So a lot of that's consumer behavior elements, but we recognize here that even in spite of those, people are increasingly going towards an ebook solution. There's also an element of immediacy. So I had an interesting idea the other day. I wanted to find a book to learn a little bit more about it. I could have driven to the bookstore. I could have ordered it from Amazon, but there was an ebook version available online, and within about 3 minutes of desiring it, I was able to buy it. So again, there's an immediacy that you can have as well. What we see here, while ebook sales are increasing dramatically, ebook readers are decreasing dramatically. Now that's not intuitive. You would think that if ebook sales are increasing, and for them to increase at this rapid rate, it also means that people are going to need to adopt ebooks for the first time, and they're going to need to read these things. So you would think that arguably your ebook reader forecast should increase as well.
I have a question. Do iPads and tablets count as ebook readers?
Not in this survey.
Well, then people
So
just
that's
buy
the difference.
things that can read them.
Kindle, as it's initially conceived as an ebook reader, is winding down. Now they have the Kindle Fire, which is more tablet-like, has other features, functions. For the Kindle that you bought in 2009, you said? Okay, so you watch a lot of movies on that?
No.
Why not?
You can't.
Can't.
That's only black.
It's black and white. So in that way, why didn't you buy a Kindle Fire that you could read books and you could watch movies and listen to music and its color?
I have like other things that can do that.
In 2009?
No, but like
No. So wasn't available. Had you had the option of buying something that was an ebook reader and web and movie and other things, maybe you would have done it. It would have been expensive. But what we're seeing again, that ebook readers, as we've seen them historically, are being replaced by all variety of tablets, iPads namely, but a lot of others in the space as well. What's the market opportunity for you? Should you enter the e-book or market? Probably not. Should you enter the tablet market? Should you go home and start building tablets? Probably not. Why not?
Because that technology is already there. There's going to be something.
Too late. Yeah, you're already behind the curve, and you probably don't want to compete against Apple and Samsung.
I'm not that scared.
Is there an opportunity there for you anyway?
Yes.
Okay. What might you do in this, recognizing growth in this market?
Well, first of all, you could invest.
Okay. But we're entrepreneurs, so we want to start companies. So how can you compete or participate in this market if you're not going to start an ebook or a tablet company?
You could start like apps they could use.
Okay. Who is they?
Consumers.
Okay. You could start different apps and add-ons and complementary software that you can use with your ebooks. So it's something else you install that might in some way make the ebook reading experience better. What else could you do? Yep.
Find whatever fault these sorts of things have, like let's say their glass is too weak and you could make like a stronger glass.
Okay. You could try and buy some add-ons, and we see that. Again, you pay a couple of $100 for an iPhone. What do people buy next?
A case.
Buy a case. Why you buy a case for something that you just bought?
Because iPhones, as you can tell, aren't very durable.
Okay. A lot of people have cracked glass. So people want a case on the back. People want these screens and protectants and Gorilla Glass and all kinds of stuff on the front. Some people want to put these in another case. So you have this case, and then you have another case. You're putting that inside. So there's add-ons and features and other ways to participate if you believe that the tablet market is growing. And you can also do things here as well. For ebooks, what are the formats? If you're going to buy an ebook, you have some choice of what format you're going to buy. People familiar with that or have seen that? So there's .epub, there's .mobi. Some people do PDFs. There's Kindle versions. There are arguably half a dozen different formats for people that write ebooks. What do they write in? What do you think they write in? Word. Most ebook authors write a document in a Word document. And then they have to somehow figure out, how do I get it in all these other versions? What's the opportunity for entrepreneurs there?
Make a website online that can convert files to.
You can have some file conversion sites.
Not too many that are.
There are a handful that are out there, but there are no market leaders in that space. I can't name any of them by brand or by company. What else can you do?
Make a better pen thing that converts to Word.
Okay.
I don't think they work that well.
Okay. A pen that converts to Word. What do you mean?
Like you write on the, I've seen them, they're like you write on the paper and then it converts it to type.
Okay. So some of these elements for writers that want to write, and then it converts that to text. So it's like a character recognition type software and tools. So there are lots of ways to participate without necessarily going in and trying to develop the next tablet. But what we want to think about, again, is it's these young industries that favor new firms, and there is substantially less competition versus established industries. There's more of a level playing field. Meaning that, again, if you're not out there trying to compete with Apple, you're trying to compete with the 2 or 3 companies that are doing some software that's trying to convert docs to Mobi files for ebooks, that's a much more, I'd say, feasible space to enter. And that way their brand is not there yet, their relationships are not there yet, they don't have a big customer base. They might have some more money than you, but they don't have Apple money. So in that way, much easier to compete against someone that is more similar to us as a startup. And also, there might not be a dominant design or a standard that's been put in place that you have to follow. So you might have more room to be creative, to innovate, to be flexible in the design of what it is that you're doing. So this is a Maryland company. It's called Zero Chroma, started by an engineering alum from Maryland. And he recognized opportunities in this space of doing cases. And we'll take a quick look at what he does that's differentiated. So how is that different than other products on the market?
Well, it has a bunch of different ways you can hold it up, but it also connects to
Okay, so it has a cover on it when you do the iPad version. When you do the iPhone version, it's have this on the back still with the clip and the angle. It doesn't have a cover on it. I don't really want a cover. But again, I have the model that they're showing for an iPad as well. And again, it has these, I think there's 16 different angles that you can do. And you can do it horizontal or vertical. So in that way, depending on what it is you're doing, you've got some flexibility there. And it also collapses such that it's relatively flat on the back. So it's not like a picture frame where you have a big hinge hanging off. It's kind of self-contained. It folds right up into it.
Are they making products for iPhone 5?
Yep.
What's the name of their website?
Zero, Z-E-R-O, Chroma, C-H-R-O-M-A.
Is the patented?
Yes. So he has multiple patents on this. And so they started doing this with the original iPad and with the iPhone 4, I think is when they entered the market. So they're a relatively new company. But they realized that, again, people were not necessarily satisfied with the cases that were out there, although there were many. Why would you need such a thing? Why do you need this kickstand that's flexible?
when you're watching a movie.
When you're watching a movie, and so in that way, again, if you're seated and there's a table near you, if it's a coffee table, if you're seated at a kitchen table, if you're on an airplane and you want that angle and you want it to kind of stay, that way you're not watching your movie like this for 2 hours. There's value in that. How else could you use this?
When you're reading a book.
When you're reading a book, you want to prop it open. When you're browsing websites, you want to prop it open. I use this as my alarm clock, so I can put this by bed and kind of have it up a little bit like that. If I'm on an airplane doing something, I angle it up because I'm sitting at a higher angle. I use this as a stopwatch in classes when students are doing presentations, so I can kind of turn it up and just set it, at the desk where I'm sitting, and they can see their clock and kind of see how they're doing there. So, again, pretty flexible, pretty dynamic. What do you charge for this?
$20.
$39. Why do you charge $39?
This cases are $20. So you can
Because your standard issue cheap cases are oftentimes $20. So again, a bit of a premium offering. Certainly is more expensive to make when you have these elements of having to figure out not only the engineering of it, but the manufacturing of it. And again, it's a bit more of a premium product. What about the iPad case? What's that cost?
$50.
This is $40. So an iPad case is a far away from $50. I think it's like $69 or thereabouts. What's a normal iPad case cost? Maybe $50. So again, you're paying a premium. You're paying a 30, maybe 40% premium. But again, different product, different features, and they've done quite well with this. But they're not trying to be the cheapest out there. They're not trying to buy, or not trying to be the cheapest thing in the market. They're not trying to be the most expensive. But again, different offering, premium offering, so a bit more of a premium price.
Do they have to pay like copyright stuff to Apple for making a case or something?
Nope. All they're doing is making something that's compatible. So anytime you're making an accessory or something that's compatible, it's no different than I'm going to make a book bag that you can put books in. It's just compatible. Now, they cannot, on the back of this thing, put an Apple logo on it. That would be trademark infringement and would be illegal unless you license that from Apple. They can't call it an iPhone case as part of the branding necessarily, but they can say this is a Zero Chroma case that's compatible with iPhones. So there again, there's some element of making sure you're not trying to represent it as a product of the company, Apple, or a product that has been endorsed by Apple, but you can certainly say that it's compatible, compliant, that it works with, and that's completely fine. And many companies do that. Many companies do that. So interesting way that they're participating in this space of this phenomena of the iPhones and this and that without trying to compete directly with Apple. They want Apple to be highly successful. They want everybody to own an iPhone 5. Why?
So more people can buy their case.
Because it increases their market size for people that will buy their case. You also see some things that are missing. So somebody has a Galaxy, Samsung Galaxy. Anybody not have an iPhone? Okay, so several of you not have an iPhone. You like this? You'd be interested? So some, you're out of luck. Why don't they have anything for you?
Maybe there's not a big enough market for it.
They've done the research, and they feel like, let's spend our time and money trying to get the Apple customer. And maybe we could sell other versions of this as well, but that's not our focus. That's not where we think our time and money is best spent. So just as we have talked about strategy before and deciding what you're not going to do, they've decided they're not going to do anything that's not Apple. For now. In summary, when we think about industry status and life cycle, we want to emphasize that new ventures tend to perform better in younger industries. In that model, they certainly have the opportunity to enter the market that is relatively immature, meaning that there's less competition, meaning that there is more of a level playing field to enter as a new venture with other smaller firms. It also might give you the opportunity to more effectively compete for customer loyalties. If the industry is new, if there are not major competitors already in play, and if there are not already major brands in play, you might have an easier time of attracting customers. You might have an easier time of attracting customers that are already with competitors because they haven't been there for long. You may also find that it's easier to attract customers that aren't yet using a product or service like yours because it is, again, a new industry. And in that way, it's much easier to sign on someone that's brand new that isn't already affiliated with a competitor.